I mean, if we have time, could I ask you about the
Yeah,
trip or? Okay.
yeah, yeah, of course.
Basically, what happened was, it was actually a small amount of mushrooms, but it took me to a place that I went with 5-MeO DMT like
Mm.
4 years ago, 5 years ago. I had a really traumatic trip. I felt like I like dissolved into everything, and then I was everything, and then I was like, wait, what are other people? I freaked out. Got over that, but now I did these mushrooms, and I went to the same place where it felt like something collapsed in me, and I was like, wait, like, how am I going to talk to anyone? Or if it just felt like I was, it felt like I really got to the core of what I am. Uh, and that's like, it felt like I'm actually nothing, and
Yeah,
everything is appearing in me as
that's
nothing.
true. Hmm.
And that was trippy because I was going to call my friend because I started to panic. Before that, I started to panic and I was about to call my friend. And then I was like, wait, I'm appearing as that. Who am I going to talk to? And I started freaking out. Um, and so I called him, and then that didn't really help. It helped a little bit, but then I was like still freaking out. And then I started to calm down because I was like, wait, if this is actually the nature of things, me freaking out about it, like this isn't going to help. So I started to like marinate in it and uh, came to terms with it a little bit, and just bliss started to happen. And then, but then it's the weirdest thing because I'm talking to you, and I could talk to my friend, and it's so convincing that you're over there. But in that moment, on that trip and before on really deep trips, it's totally clear that there's nobody else, but there's also not really me. But I
Yeah.
don't know how to like,
Uh, put them together. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Uh, Here's the thing. Both are true. So the best way that I found uh, to explain it, so that the mind sort of is no longer tripping over it, but it would still be trippy on the level of experience. But basically, here's the thing: you're alone. You're completely alone in your experience, just like everyone else. But it doesn't mean that there are no other people. So that's why I actually don't like teachings that stop at there is no other. They're actually incomplete teachings. So, for example, very very late Osho, uh, when when his journey was more or less complete, only closer to the end of his life, started talking about how his body and spirit were finally one, how return to the body was complete, and how the complete enlightenment is just becoming a completely ordinary human being, right? So so unfortunately, most teachings kind of stop at there is no other, but the truth is uh, there is no other is true when it comes to experience, right? You cannot experience anyone else but yourself. This is true. And also, there is no psychological other. Meaning that, like, for example, if you're talking to another person and they say something and it arises some experience, it arises some pain, you are still experiencing yourself. You cannot experience anyone directly, right? So the way that we can interpret is that there is no other is that everything, like, you can look at it as that all of your experience, all of it without exception, is in your brain basically, and you are like you can say that you are the brain experiencing yourself, right? uh, so so everything that you can possibly experience in this world uh, is created by you, by the brain, for your own consumption, right? This is true, right? So from that perspective, there's literally nobody out there, right? Like you are seeing my image, uh, but my image is not you. Oh, sorry, but my image on the screen is not me, right? My image on your screen is the image that your brain generated, right? So if you have, like, for example, uh, some differences in vision. If you were colorblind, it would be a different image, right? So you're actually looking at your own perception. You're looking at your own vision. So this applies to pretty much everything, right? So you're not seeing the actual world. You are seeing your perception, your brain's perception of the actual world, right? Does it mean that there is no actual world? No, of course not, right? So statements like, for example, when I close my eyes the world disappears, are actually very naive. They are true subjectively speaking. When you close your eyes, or when you fall asleep, there is no perception. So from that perspective, your perception of the world disappears. But if you fall asleep and I can come to you and hit you with a stick and you wake up, then obviously the world didn't disappear, right? So that's why it's kind of both and neither. Psychologically, there is no other. So all kind of psychological pain and suffering uh, is created by the formation of a separate entity in the brain or in your consciousness, depending on how you want to look at it, that is engaged in emotional codependent relationship with other imaginary entities in the brain. You know, and that's why the judgments hurt and stuff. So that's basically the bondage. That's the in Freudian terms. That's the ego and superego. Both exist in the brain, and they engage in the relationship in the brain. So in this terminology, enlightenment is the dissolution of both the ego and superego. That's why subjectively, phenomenologically, it may feel like you're merging with other people, and it can get really scary. And there are even some people who had some glimpses of those experiences, and they confused and they convinced that enlightenment is physically merging with other people. No, it's psychologically merging with other people, right? So even after all of this is said and done, and you're continuously and effortlessly in the same state that mushrooms or 5-MeO DMT took you, and there is no psychological other, there's peace, there's love and stuff like that. If you touch me, you will still feel some uh, sensation. The sensation is yours. You're the only one who's feeling it, right? But if I can touch you back, I also exist. I also exist, and it's the same for me. And it's also the same with animals, right? So you're looking at the dog is looking at you. The dog's vision of you is very different. The dog's senses, the nose is very different, right? You have no access to her, to it experience. It has no access to your experience, but then you can touch each other still and interact. So the nature of reality includes both, and a much more accurate statement is that there is no psychological other. I mean, you can extend it to the physical sensation when you say that all physical sensations are also yours, but the really wrong extension of it, which is very often used in spirituality, and there's a period where it feels exactly like that, is that I'm completely alone. There is no world. There are no other people. That's basically solipsism, and it's wrong because it also does not, uh, it has no connection to why enlightenment leads to uh, uh, lack of physical aggression, kindness, and stuff like that. Because like only the conditioning, only this separated self is convinced that something needs to be fixed through aggression. Only the pain of conditioning leads people to be cruel and callous. So, if there really was no other, and if you were completely alone, then it absolutely wouldn't matter if other people died or lived. Like there would be no place for kindness, there would be no place for compassion. You see, so those kind of this sinking into this state uh, can be really trippy. But once you sink there sufficiently, then what I'm saying kind of becomes obvious. So even though you're alone in your experience, there's still other people, and they have similar experiences. They may have more suffering or less suffering. They may be kind of healthy individuals, just like you at this state, just like animals, or they may be burdened with the separation in the mind, with the psychological games in the mind, with the unprocessed conditioning and repressed emotions, but they still exist. but you can perceive them only through your senses. So from your perspective, there is no other. So it's kind of both. You see, it's both.
Yeah, that's cool. My mind said solipsism 5 years ago because I was trying to make sense of it and I was horrified. This time, it was horrifying at first, but I was like, wait, stop making stories about it.
Yeah.
And then it started to become blissful, and
Hmm.
I really can't explain it. But I think this is like the greatest fear and also where the greatest rewards are.
Yeah.
It's weird, but I'm
Yeah.
optimistic.
That is the greatest fear, because in the separated state, this fear is associated with death. So when we think about death in the separated state, we think about that, right?
Hmm.
But it's not real death, but kind of in the separated state is accumulated fear. And when we're coming back home, we experience this fear. And you're absolutely right. Don't worry about the narratives. Just invite the fear, and there's always bliss. There's always relaxation that is beyond fear.
Definitely. Cool. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's my pleasure. It was good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
All right.